do not see, there, a little less muffled. I do not see any candles glowing. But I do believe that in this community, we have in our hearts and in our thoughts various joys and sorrows. If there's any joy or sorrow you would like to lift up into this community to be shared before this time of worship, please say so now, and I will light a candle while you say what it's for. All right, John, we're all laughing as you light a candle for concern for the choir. Jean.
My son Mike had successful surgery on his lumbar region and some bulging discs.
So a candle for Jean Rose's son's successful back surgery on his discs. John.
And this is a real one. A kind of hope, joy, concern for Jim Hardy as he struggles to figure out, he and his doctors, what's going on with his vertebra situation in his leg and everything.
John asks for a candle of concern for Jim Hardy as he's trying to figure out what's going on with the pain in his leg and getting treatment. John.
On the subject of the choir, aren't we lucky? Wonderful music in our service here. Wonderful.
John asked for this candle, and there's accolades from everyone here for how much music and the joy of the music from the choir and all the others.
I forget what I promised to pay him for that book.
And remember, cash.
I'll light a candle for those things that haven't been shared. Maybe there's somebody who's typing into the chat box online, and this candle will represent those things not verbally lifted up in community. But let's remember, this is what our community is about, being able to share and bring what we have in our hearts into this space. Thank you. Leave this one here for later. All right, we're going to have some announcement slides here, and welcome to everyone. Whether it's your first time, whether you're returning again after a brief or long respite away from this community, whatever it may be that brought you here, welcome. No matter who you are, who you love, what is true to yourself, welcome here into this place of diversity and embrace. I'm glad you're here. Our announcements this morning, you saw many of them running on the screen, and Catherine, if you want to run through them, I'll do the show and tell of the screen. Circle dinners are coming up on the 22nd. We mentioned them last week too. There is a sign up in the UUTC foyer. I think I saw somebody writing their name on a clipboard in the foyer. But you can also contact Keem Moya by email and let Keem know that you are interested as well. Sharing House is the community organization that we're supporting this month with the special envelopes in the collection baskets. So when it's time to give a little bit as the baskets come by, you may want to grab one of those envelopes and slip a little bit inside for them. Just up the road, really, just up the road from us, and doing a good job on many levels in our community. Thank you for voting to have them as one of the community organizations we give part of our collection to. Kevin told me the family campout is so well subscribed that there will not be children's religious education next week, because it looks like we have most of the families there at the campout already signed up. If you haven't signed up, you want to talk to Kevin about going, this is just a wonderful chance to be gathered as the UUTC community of all ages on that. So thank you. Lunch with Reverend Bob this Sunday. Didn't I show that slide last week? Yes, I did. And nobody took me up on it. And I just happen to have nothing scheduled right after church today. So if anybody would like, randomly showed up and said, oh, I didn't even think of having a brunch in town, pick out a place, let me know where we're going to go, and I'll pick up my part of the bill. We can go Dutch treat and have good conversation. Really? Is that it? No more announcements? So, for all of us, thank you for the many ways that we have been active and involved, for those who helped out with yard sale, for those who help out with keeping our building up and running, for everyone. My announcement here is this place works because you do. Thank you.
The opening words are going to be done in unison today. They will be up on the screen. The opening words are Witness of the World by Reverend Tanya Yadira Marquez. So if you will follow along and say it as I do. It is now when we are called as witnesses of the world to mend it, to change its course, to restore it. It is now when we are called to act on our values, not to hide, not to fear, but to be bold and loud. It is now that we call to continue or fight for justice, to organize, to speak up. It is now. Let us gather. Let us give each other courage. Let us worship. And as we move deeper into our worship, if you are able to stand, or whatever, our opening hymn is number 38, Morning Has Broken. It will be on the screen.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
The chalice lighting is by Reverend Bob today. Do you remember when you were scared of fire? Perhaps you still are, but remember this. It takes more than a spark to ignite this flame. It takes smokeless oil, a trimmed wick to guide that oil to use, plus a significant amount of oxygen. It takes a community of volunteers and steady hands. It takes a clear glass vessel without leaks. and the sturdy foundation of the metal artwork. As much as we'd like to deny it, it takes friction too, the striking of a match. Maybe our religious community is like this chalice and flame. Maybe each of us is a fuel or a wick. Maybe some of us provide the friction. Here we are, a gathered people ready to see fire, courageous in lending our hearts and minds for a brief hour of heartfelt gathering and hoped for enlightenment. May the glow of this chalice represent our courage together.
All right. Day is breaking in my soul. And I'm feeling really lucky to be here today. Our words for wisdom this morning are from my own experience this week, and I'm going to need a few people to help me out here. Who wants to be a bear? You can all be bears for all, if you want, even sitting in your chairs. Come on, just lumber around like a big old bear. Big old fat bear ready for a there we go, big old fat bear ready for a winter, but probably still wanted to eat a whole lot of things. I was out for a walk this week. Oh, gorgeous time to go for a walk. Sunny, blue skies, leaves falling down onto the pathway, going through the woods. And I'm on this dirt road going through the woods near my house, walking along, enjoying it. And it smells different now with those leaves coming down. Just weeks ago, the smell was, well, apply a verbal word to it, verdant. Now it's kind of crunchy and dry. Well, I wasn't the only one out for a walk. Turns out as I turned a corner, just walking along, I'm not bothering anybody, and there is a bear walking along, crossing the road in the shadow just ahead of me. And I stop, and the bear stops, and we look at each other, and I reach for my phone because I'm either going to dial 911 to say I need an ambulance, or I'm going to take a picture of that bear. Bear decides, I don't want to be anywhere near this human, and just went on through the woods. I said, you know what? I'm not going to walk up to that section. I'm going to turn around and go the other way. And so I walked back the other way, and sure enough, that bear crosses the road again, only way down for me this time because that bear didn't want to be anywhere near me. Now, I think each of us has times in which we confront something where we have to have some courage. And we have to have some quick thinking when we have something dangerous come up. So like, yeah, I'm going to reach for my phone. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for whatever's going to happen here. Now, I suppose I was supposed to yell or make a nuisance of myself or something, but I think standing still, except for grabbing my phone, I think standing still was enough to say, that human isn't a threat. I'm not that hungry. I'm going to keep going through the woods. I don't know what that bear ate that day, but it wasn't me. Our theme this month is on courage. Sometimes courage means recognizing you are afraid, but you can still be you and do what's needed to be done. Think about it. If you're in a dangerous situation, it's okay to be afraid. It's all right to have your heart leap, to freeze. Some people freeze or flight or fight, all sorts of reactions when something scary comes up. The thing is, we can not just freeze or fight, we can decide what it is that's right for us to do in the situation. And you better believe, I texted Christy, my wife, and said, you can't believe what just happened. And for all I know, that bear was grumbling, I can't believe what just happened to me. Each of us in confronting the things that we didn't want to run across, we just wanted to be outside, we just wanted to go where we were going. Each one of us can reach out to someone and say, this just happened to me. So when you're scared, you're courageous or not, you can share that with somebody. You don't have to do this alone. We're part of families. We're part of a network of support. So, do you think that was the only time I've seen a bear? No. I was driving down 64 from Etowah, not on my bike, this is good, and a bear went right across the road in front of us driving. I can tell you where. Right in front of that Chinese buffet with big peak red roof. Went right up that, cross the road, and right up, straight up that embankment. Yeah. There is no way I would have gotten away from that bear. So sometimes we're lucky. Sometimes we're okay. Sometimes our courage to make it through means we live to another day and we can reflect on the ways we were scared and the ways we had courage and thinking how to make it through life and glad that we can do so. That's our story. Now, Bart, you're going to help somebody light this candle up here, or you?
Eli will be lighting our candle.
Eli, all right. part you want to get the flame from. Just, you've got it. Turning that sideways makes it easier here. I think you're going to have to get that into it. We make this challenging. There we go. Safe to carry, hard to light. Let's sing the children out as they go off to their classes. Now, I don't know about you, but when I've just made it through a dangerous situation, I am so grateful. I pull out my ATM money, and I'm ready to put it in a basket. Is anybody ready to pass baskets this morning? May we give generously, knowing how grateful we are to be alive in this community. May we give to Sharing House and to this congregation for the good of all the good work. We'll now receive the morning offering. Here you go, Dick.
I'll take it.
For all that's given in love, we receive with great joy, and we say thank you. Thank you, Susan. In whatever way you gather yourself for prayer and meditation, I invite you to do so now. Taking a deep breath, whether you close your eyes, center your body in such a way that you're comfortable for this moment and can reach out your hearts and your minds. Spirit of love and life, we are gathered here are people of courage. We're also people who know our fears, understand the dangers in this world, natural and human-made. We are aware of the fragility of our lives and the ways in which age or injury may befall us in ways that are scary. Our hearts go out to those such as Jean's son whose surgery has taken place, and may there be healing. To Jim, that his back and his leg pain may be dealt with. To all of those who are grieving some loss, some twinges that didn't used to be there in their bodies, we are here. We're in solidarity with all those whose abilities shift and change dependent on the weather, the coldness in their bones. May we each learn from the courage and the uplifted spirits of those who face the challenges of each and every day. These, the prayers of our hearts we hold now in the silence. In the names of those known and unknown, remembered and forgotten, in the names of all the helpers of humankind, we say, Amen. Blessed be. Every once in a while, I remember some of the best practices of helping us realize that the individual stories we carry are worth sharing. Every once in a while, I remember that giving something of what's termed a testimonial, something speaking of the ways in which this place or our religion made a difference, helps. Maybe it helps encourage one another. Maybe it just helps each of us think, how would I stand up and speak in testimonial to what this means? I asked our worship associate this morning, Gypsy, if she'd be willing to share a story that she shared with me, with all of you.
My testimonial today is about a time when I was 13 years old and another time when I was in my early 20s. When I was 13 years old, our Unitarian Sunday school class decided that each of us would go to another denomination to hear their service. I went to the Episcopal Church. The sermon was on the return of the prodigal son. The minister seemed to indicate that people who were not a part of a religious group were not very nice people. My father was an atheist and one of the nicest men I knew. The minister was not right. I almost raised my hand in protest, but I did not. My other encounter was also with the Episcopal Church, but it was quite different. I was living with my grandmother in Baltimore, Maryland after college. The church my grandmother attended was an Episcopal church in downtown Baltimore. The Unitarian church I attended was 2 blocks from my grandmother's church. My grandmother dropped me off, and then after church, I would walk to the Episcopal church. One Sunday, she was standing with her minister, Dr. Starrett. She asked him if he could convince me to come to her church. He asked me what church I attended. I told him I attended the Unitarian church. He turned to my grandmother and said, "I think she is safe there." Dr. Starrett was saying that we all have freedom of choice.
That's right. Let's get down to our shirt sleeves and work on this. Although, you know what? I've been wearing a short sleeve shirt up till today, and it was cold in here because the air conditioner was still on. I wasn't doing anything. It was already 67 degrees in here. What was it going to do? Sermon this morning is on the theme of the courage to embrace your inner self. It's one of those things that's grounding, I believe, a grounding for all that we might do. I thank Gypsy for sharing that story of younger years and the messages around religion and self that she received. And I think back to some of the messages I received too, and maybe you will as well. In what ways did you need to be courageous in the face of those who might not want you to be yourself? Or maybe over time you found you need to be courageous because you thought you knew yourself, and now everything's changed. So what about it? For this we stand. It's what we were singing in the choir just a moment ago. For this we stand. It's an ableist word, stand. For this we make a stake. We agree that this is where we will in some way hold our values. I don't know how anybody gets to do that unless they themselves feel as if they have grounding in some way. To be able to be solid in some way. How many of you have ever raised a teenager? There's a certain time in which teenagers really need you to be solid. They, at a certain stage of life, need to push against that solid. And parents, if you don't have it together enough to meet that challenge, you may in fact be drawn into some of the worst arguments ever and lose yourself on the way. Not that I'm speaking from experience. But the same is true throughout many of the interactions we have had with bullies in life. Not just the people who love us and need us to bounce against, but there are folks out there who want to find a weakness, want to find something out of perhaps their own feeling of being denigrated, not worthy, but figuring if they can beat up someone else verbally or physically, then maybe they have some value that's greater than somebody else. I'm listening to political ads, not on purpose, but they come up more often than I expect them to. And some of those ads are just mud slinging, oh, this person's awful, this person's miserable, this person likes somebody else. Now, I remember from middle school, ooh, you like so-and-so? Hello, get out of middle school, political ads. So what? You like somebody? That's all right. If you know what you like, go for it. The inner self can be so torn, though, by all of this, that even our best friends will say, you have to do something, you have to do something. Say something back. And I think the best thing to do is to know when you need to say something and when you can just hold it in your own, that you know where you stand and you would say something if needed. I can just imagine when you're in that way. The curriculum that your group was doing in the Unitarian Church was called Church Across the Street. Decades of going and visiting other religions. They called it neighboring faiths for a newer generation. But Church Across the Street, you'd go to visit all these places and learn what they were doing, and you'd have a lesson as well about those religions. So you understood a little bit. And I could just see Gypsy deciding to raise that hand and say, no. No, preacher. To be able to come from an inner self that says, I know that that's not true. Now, we're going to have a sermon in a couple of weeks about people whose faith allowed them that chance to say no. And I hope it's inspiring to hear some of those stories. But I want to go back to the grounding part. Find yourself in places where people will say, it's okay, you're different from me. Tell me about who you are and why. Because if you're in that space with someone or some group, then you have the chance to feel like, I'm part of the family. We're all kooks, but we're all part of the family. We're different, but we're all part of the family. We're allowed to be us. And maybe you have a blessing from someone. Maybe you have a blessing from someone who says, I think you're okay being you. Now, I kind of like that too. That Episcopal minister, the priest saying, I think she's safe there with those Unitarians. It's all right. It's all right. I know a group, and I might share this story again at Christmas time because it is a Christmas story. I know a group from one congregation. It was a small congregation. They weren't doing their own Christmas Eve celebrations. It was a Mennonite group, and they would pick a different congregation to go to each Christmas Eve and learn a little bit about how that congregation celebrated the birth of Jesus. We Unitarian Universalists put together our Christmas Eve. We had one with the children's pageant, the other with the candlelight Christmas for the adults only. Well, we didn't say adults only, but it was late enough that kids weren't going to be there. And quieter in some ways that way, which is too bad because, as I've said before, you know, it happened in a stable, and believe me, that was not a quiet stable. So our Christmas Eves might as well be a little raucous and noisy. But in this case, that Mennonite group came to us and heard us sing a song about all the great leaders from Zarathustra up through whatever, and Jesus and everybody else, and we we had the choir do the Messiah, singing the Messiah, and we had all sorts of stuff about the wonder of the birth and the hope and the promise of the divine among us. We did all of that. And then we came to the point of taking the associate minister and I taking the light from the chalice and then bringing it, and you've done this, bringing it out, and each person then having their light lit, and we turn off the lights and we're just there in the glow of the candles. And there's this dark corner over there where all the Mennonites are. None of them accepted that part of the service. And I'm thinking, wow, candlelight? That's not anti-Mennonite. I don't get that. Well, a teenager from that group came up and spoke to me. That teenager had as much guts as you were having and said, well, see, we think your chalice is of the devil, so we weren't going to take the flame that you had from there. I said, oh, well, that makes sense. I'd wondered why you didn't. Now, I didn't react and say, no, that's not right. I said, oh, that's an interesting perspective. I'm glad to learn from you. I wondered why. Sometimes, even when we are being accused of being the devil or doing the devil's ways, and I know this as a Unitarian Universalist, there are plenty of religious circles I'm not invited into. But I know, if I know myself how I feel about our symbolism, about the values that we teach, I know in knowing that I feel okay about being me. Yeah, I could improve some things. John, in asking for a candle of prayer for that choir, we know how hard we practiced and how challenging things were. I know that there are ways in which I am challenged and stretched. My inner self, though, somehow has this sense that it's okay. So even as a teenager may come up and say, well, no, we didn't want that flame because we think it's from the devil. Like, oh. And some of the people around that kid were like, because they didn't want to be impolite on Christmas Eve or whatever. But it's okay. Because that's the value of what we have here, and I think they had it too. I recognized in that group, they wanted to learn about others. So I could talk about the chalice and could tell what I think the chalice stands for, how I think it all went together. But it is true. Somebody did raise their hand in that service and say, I don't know why you sang about Zarathustra. This should all be about Jesus. I haven't heard a thing about Jesus. So the choir got up again and spontaneously did the Messiah all over again, is thinking that person hadn't heard it the first time. Because sometimes it's hard. If we're in a space where we're afraid, we suddenly find ourselves surrounded by people who aren't like us, and the message that doesn't sound like the message we're used to hearing and is not saying what we want it to say sometimes. On the one hand, we have to say, I'm uncomfortable with this. And on the other hand, there are those who will rise up and sing the song and say, listen again, and you'll hear us. I've been reading for many years now Parker Palmer, author of Courage to Teach and Courage to Lead and Let Your Life Speak, and one that Jane Hilliard loaned to me. Sorry, Jane, still have it. Been a long time. Part way through it. But this one said, on the brink of everything, grace, gravity, and getting old. Now there's courage. Being on the brink of everything, including getting old. Now, I think there's some folks in this congregation who are getting that, who are understanding that. I'm there with you. There are certain things that have been different about this decade of my life compared to other decades of my life. And my understanding of self shifts depending on what I can accomplish or not. Some of you know that Christy and I brought in an electric or a battery-operated mower. I am not to mow anymore. Something about myself has to be redefined. I am still a worthy person even if I can't mow my own lawn. All right. But it's a little more essential than that. The ways in which we are traumatized when we are younger may come back to visit us again when we're older. And I want to lift up two things. It's the wrong month to read this one, but you know what? It needs to be said now. He talked about November 22nd. On this day, long years ago, our promising young president was killed. He was far too young to die, and I too young to watch my world unravel as it did. I grieved my loss, our loss, then started to reweave a work, a life, a world, not knowing then what I know now. The world unravels always, and it must be rewoven time and time again. You must keep collecting threads, threads of meaning, threads of hope, threads of purpose, energy and will, along with all the knowledge and skill that every weaver needs. You must keep on weaving, sometimes stopping only to repair your broken loom. There are times when, for our inner self, we need those times of repair. I don't know how many of you are paying attention to the news. I certainly am. There's a whole lot to be scared about. And the ways in which we have confronted the world, or the world has confronted us in our fears, have left us sometimes with some little bit of our loom that gets broken when we're touching again on the fears. The world is too much with us, late and soon, getting and spending. We lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. Wordsworth wrote those words 200 years ago. We may be consumed by items in the news or relationships we have with certain family members, consumed because we are touched again by the fears of watching a world unravel around us. Whatever it may be, our society, we have been told now there is early data showing that young adults were affected very severely by the pandemic in ways which may shape and traumatize a sense of being out there. What were we saying before the pandemic? Young people should get off their devices and relate to one another, and then the whole world shut down. What did we say? Go out and see the whole world. You only see some small part of it, and we said stay in your room, it's safe. But we had experiences. Maybe we saw Challenger explode. Maybe we saw a president who was murdered on November 22nd. Maybe we had something happen in a death in our family, a tornado or hurricane, something that ripped apart our worlds. On the brink of everything, we need to remember who we are and adjust who we are to knowing something more essential about ourselves and being able to get there. If you walk down the road and there's a bear right ahead of you in the road, what do? I don't know what you're going to do, but I pulled out my phone. And maybe that was the stupidest thing to do. But on that day, it worked. And maybe you'll find something, too, that you can pull out of your pocket, a reminder of who you are, a joy about something that's rare and true about yourself, a knowledge, as Gypsy had said, no, it's people who don't go to church aren't all bad. My dad's an atheist, and he's one of the best people I know. Hold on to your truths. No, truly. Something of your inner self, because in this world where we have to repair our own loom, we have to go on weaving again and again in a broken world, weaving it back together. Maybe so. May you find that inner self again and again refreshed. Blessings on all of you. Thank you for listening to this sermon. Now, if you have a courage, what did I say? Maybe some of us are the spark or the wick or the oil or the container. We started this service with a reading on fire and lighting a fire, and it's not of the devil. And we're going to end this service with hymn number 1028, The Fire of Commitment. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. And the neat thing is we're going to have Carlene and the choir helping us get there. But the ushers know that in these boxes are also hymn books for those of you who say, I know what I need. And if you want one of those things, instead of looking up here and listening to all of us in the choir, you're welcome to have that. 1028, Fire of Commitment.
When the fire
that. John just said, wow. Good job. Yay. So this light's going to go out. It's going to be gone. But this metalwork is still here. That glass jar holding the oil is still without leaks. The wick will still be drawing the oil when it's time. May you go out, bringing whoever you are to a world that needs the you that's you, with the courage to know your inner self well enough to stand up to the unraveling in the world around you, and to come back again with a little bit of friction, a lot of love, to watch this flame relit once again. Blessings on all of you. Amen.